Enregistrement de cet appel en cours.
Hello, solo of the month and flute friends near and far. Welcome to our monthly group practice. This is April of 2026, and our focus today is going to be on the Dance of the Blessed Spirits, or Menuet and Dance of the Spirits. It has a bunch of names by Gluck, and this is from the opera Orfeo e Euridice, which is a great dramatic story that we can really lean into as we start to play this piece. As always, I'd like to just begin by warming up together a little bit. We're going to warm up in a couple of ways. We're going to start with something a little technical, but do it very, very slowly and focus on our inhale. So as we inhale, I invite you all to think about creating a shape of an O for now, like you're saying ho, creating warm, low sound there, and then try inhaling in the same way. And we want to create as low of a pitch as possible. Low pitch equals open space. I'm going to share my screen and show you just a simple exercise to which we're going to apply this. We're going to play one measure of this D melodic minor turnaround. So it should be the very top line you see there, having A, B natural, C sharp, D, C natural, B flat, A. And is that big enough for everybody? I can zoom in just a little bit, I think. Doop, maybe. Well, I can scroll apparently. All right, it's not letting me zoom in at all. So again, that notes are A, B, C sharp, D, C, B flat, A. And we're gonna do it just one time for now and stop there. And each time we repeat this, I want to encourage you to take not just the O breath, but a double O breath. So really breathing in slow, deep, and low. And we can talk about the anatomy of breathing at another time, but for now, let's just try this and see how it feels. So just that first little bit. You'll also notice we need to start with a thumb B flat off. When your thumb is in the air for the C natural, you might put your thumb B flat back on for that B flat. So if you're new to thumb B flat changes, you might focus on that this time. We'll keep it that slow or even slower again. Trying to think of that air being warm as we play the flute now. So a thing I've been repeating with my students a lot this past couple of weeks, and seasonally throughout every single year, is what we practice is what we pattern or what we learn. And if we're only practicing short, fast breaths, because that's all we have time for in band rehearsal or orchestra rehearsal or just the excitement of learning what's next, then we're not ever learning that we can take deeper, fuller, warmer, easier feeling breaths. So let's try doing that exact same pattern up the octave. And you'll see it's the A, B, C sharp, D written out. So we will use the different fingering for D, but the other fingers are the same. So this is the fourth measure technically on that first line. Moving from the dominant, the fifth scale degree, the A, up to the tonic, the D, and back down to the dominant. Just one time per breath for now. Upper octave. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the D harmonic minor turnarounds. So those of you who use my scale book, thanks for the support. Cool. That was on page 15, and the harmonic minor turnarounds are on page 41. Again, it'll be the very first line on page 41. So in the harmonic minor, we keep the 6th scale degree as it is in the key signature always. And we raise the 7th scale degree, the leading tone, always. So in this case, we have A, B flat, C sharp, D, C sharp, B flat, A. And the scale is unique in that it has a minor third between the B flat and C sharp. So we're going to have to really think about keeping our air continuous as the intervals get larger. So a lot of our tone exercises are focused on half steps or maybe even whole steps. And we get really good at keeping the air connecting those 2 small intervals, but it's also good for us to practice connecting larger intervals of thirds, fourths, fifths, etc. So let's try the lower octave again of this D harmonic minor turnaround, starting with that double O warm inhale. And I notice when I exhale, thinking of my throat being super open and the air staying warm, I can't play as long of a phrase as I can when I'm normally playing. So when I'm playing, I'm going to have to create some amount of restriction eventually to regulate the air. But again, if we never convince ourselves, and I see you yawning out there, that's exactly the feeling that we want. If we never practice with this feeling of openness, we'll never be able to begin to adapt it into our own playing style. So let's go for the extreme, as open, as slow, as lazy as possible. D harmonic minor turnaround, starting on the A. Again. And up the octave. And of course, I love practicing this throughout the range of the flute. So that double O inhale is inspired by an exercise that Sarah Jackson, the piccolo player of the LA Philharmonic, teaches. And she does it with a 5-note scale pattern, just doing one and like a diatonic type thing. Etc. And she goes even slower than that. So it's inspired by her taking the time to warm up with that openness for her piccolo and flute playing. So now that we've all tried that, what are some things that you noticed about how it felt to do that? Anybody out there have any observations of the sound of their breath, the sound of their flute, or the just general feeling that you had when doing it?
Well, it was hard not to yawn.
Well, again, and Anita, bonus points if you do yawn.
The B flat to the C sharp, so close, but yet so far, you know.
A minor third isn't much further than a half step or a whole step, but it can feel a lot further if that's not part of our regular warm up of larger intervals aren't part of it. And if you're doing arpeggio practice as a tone exercise, then you're getting those intervals in there also. But yes, I agree, Dr. Deborah, that the even just adding an extra half step of interval can make it feel like a completely different experience, a different challenge. Great. Other thoughts and observations out there?
There's always the Moïse exercise, right? It takes an incrementally half step wider interval, and you take 2 approaches. You either try to connect it smoothly with a slurred pattern, or you try and articulate it cleanly with a staccato.
Yes, perfect. And Sean is referencing the Moïse de la Sonorité book, which should be on the shelf somewhere behind me. But I think in Moïse's book, he starts with on an F. He does it eventually on every note, but and just extends the interval all the way down to low C and then all the way up to high C. So that's the exercise that I would call growing intervals. And that is a wonderful exercise for feeling more comfortable with growing the intervals. Thanks for that reminder, Sean. And those of you who don't have the Moïse de la Sonorité, if it's something that you're interested in getting, I would like to remind everybody that Flute World is our generous partner for Soul of the Month that gives us 10% off all sheet music and accessories using code Allison 2026. And that includes accessories that are like bigger things like Altieri bags and those fancy flute cases and stuff like that too. So it can really make a big difference. But the Moist books aren't cheap for some reason. And I guess because they're, I don't know, well protected. So the 10% off would make a big difference if you're getting any of the Moist books, because I think those like start at $30 or something like that, right? Do you know?
Yeah, it's because it's a La Duke or a Paris thing, you know, has to cross the pond. So they're going to add another 0. But Dr. Matthew, the scale exercise that we did of yours, where can one get that?
Good question. So I'll post a link. It's the Practice Flute Scale book. Scales and arpeggios. So yeah, it's kind of a theory. It's a applied theory book, and it has digital download for that. So
okay.
So I especially like it for students who aren't comfortable with all 12 major and then their relative minors, because it kind of talks through the theory of it and then it applies the theory. So it talks about circle of fourths and then it has you play going up 4 notes in a scale and down 4 notes in a scale to figure out what a fourth is. And it talks about circle of fifths and have you play up 5 notes and down 5 notes and stuff like that. So I think of it as applied theory. So if you've got great theory skills or great scale skills already, it's probably not for you. It doesn't have anything super exciting as far as scale patterns go. But if you're still in the process of learning your scales, so far it's my favorite book to use as a teaching reference for that kind of stuff. Thanks for that question, Deborah. Any other thoughts or questions before we continue to move on? All right, so those 2 scales were chosen for a reason. Does anybody have a guess of why I picked those 2 scales specifically, or those 2 variations of the same scale specifically?
Because those are the 2 scales that are in this piece that we're going to play.
Yeah, well, especially the notorious run in measure 36. So those of you who are using the tom play version of this, I believe it stays melodic minor the entire way. So the entire run in measure 36 on the tom play version is melodic minor with the raised 6th and 7th, the raised B natural and C sharp. And there's nothing wrong with playing that if you like the way it sounds. I like the other version that I'll go and share my screen too, so you can see the version to which I'm referencing, which I use the My Pianist app, and My Pianist is also a great partner for us. Whatever it is that we're playing, if it's in public domain, they make a piano part for it, which is really kind of them. But you can see in measure 37, I'm going to just go ahead and highlight it. So that way it's easier to see. Measure 37 right here. That probably made it harder to see because it's kind of messy. The first beat of it is that a melodic minor ascending part, A, B, C sharp, D. And then when you go from the next A, we have the B flat, C sharp, D, which becomes the harmonic minor. So the first part of the scale is melodic minor, and the second part of the scale is harmonic minor. And for those of you who are newer to the thumb B flat, it is a wonderful thing to switch on and off when appropriate. So your thumb is in the air for the C sharp, and that is a good place for you to go ahead and mark in your music. Where's the plus sign on this keyboard? Sorry, guys, I got a new computer and it has then new everything, right? Is that a plus sign? Hopefully that's a plus sign. So when my thumb is in the air for the D, or for the C sharp, I put the thumb B flat on at that D. So if you're new to thumb B flat, or even if you're not, let's go ahead and just practice that. Playing A, B, C sharp, switch your thumb onto the thumb B flat for the D. . A, B, C sharp, switch your thumb to the thumb B flat on the D, and then you can just leave it there for the rest of the phrase. You won't need to take it off until the B natural in measure 39. And again, it's easy to switch back on. So you can put it back on after the D in measure 39. So it's there for the B flat and there for the remainder of what I can see, at least on this page. So that thumb B flat does make the technique much, much smoother here. And then that run becomes something that is accessible. John, I see you've got a question.
Hello. Hi. Just a question regarding the thumb B flat. Is your finger going, is your thumb going directly on the, is it going between the two keys, or is it going right on? My flute, maybe it's a little on adjustment. It worked better if I go right on it.
If your flute is properly regulated, then it won't matter.
Yeah, well.
If it does matter, then you kind of have to lean on both to compensate for the thumb key not being fully regulated.
Okay, but there still is a point of where do you suggest putting on a perfectly regulated flute? Where does it go? In between the keys?
On the whatever's comfortable, actually, either
okay. One. So it doesn't. Okay.
Whatever's comfortable makes a lot of sense. When I first started using thumb B flat, I moved it all the way over. Nowadays, I like to press both keys. It is comfortable. It's less of a thumb shift, less of that motion of the thumb moving. And then also, you know, even though I try to be prepared as far as knowing what thumb I want to use, there are oops moments where I just need to be able to get off of it. So I play both keys when I play thumb B flat. And now with my students, I teach them to press both keys. The size of the thumb can have something to do with it. So some of my smaller students with smaller hands, I guess I should say, it's less easy for them to press both keys because then their little finger feels the crease deeply. But like on my flute, there's hardly any crease between the two keys. So it's very comfortable for me to press them both. And then I can get off of it if I need to. So there isn't a right or wrong. There is a what it feels most comfortable for your hands and keeping your hands healthy.
I know if B flat isn't working for you, the lever works just fine in that passage.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but someone with really small hands might have trouble reaching the lever.
I do have it. My second flute is an Armstrong, and there's a gap. There's a bigger gap between the two the two thumb keys. So it gets it's not great. You get
not all mechanisms are designed to, you know, as well as some modern flutes are.
Yeah. And not all repair adjustments are either. I've had some techs that bent keys to make them work better, and then when they were done bending not on these flutes, but like my older flutes, they bend keys to make them work faster, and then like another problem came up later. So great. All right, so in measure 36, we're seeing that is a melodic minor start and then potentially a harmonic minor continuation. I love that variation of it because the melodic minor, the start of the scale, melodic minor, because it has that, it compels the music upward, the pitch upward. It feels more hopeful to me. And then the harmonic minor, because it has the minor third, feels like it's creating space. And so in my mind, it's like the run is starting off with like hopefulness, and then it's kind of moving into like that relaxed acceptance or letting go of that hope, and then instead embracing what is. So that minor third to me creates that extra little space that I think is perfect for this ballet scene. So thoughts on that run? Any questions on that run? Do you see how it's those two scales that we just warmed up? Other ways of practicing that, again, is 30-second notes at a relatively slow tempo. 30-second notes automatically make us feel tense and scared. Doing that slow, open O breath in and playing one beat plus one note. So going from the A to the E. Going from the E to the B flat, and hopefully your thumb switched. Going from the B flat to the high F. Putting it together, all three of those eighth notes. And yeah, I do like to linger a little bit on that B flat because I think it makes that sense of like, oh, I'm no longer hopeful, feel more dramatic and deep. So if you notice me doing that, it's not that I can't play that run evenly. I just like to give that B flat a little bit of tenuto to highlight that lowered sixth in there to rip the hope away. Amy, you got a thought or a question?
Yes. I have a quick question. I saw your copy when you reached the top F. It seems like, could you bring up your sheets? The copy I have has no tonguing of the high F. And on yours, it seems like it's like a starting of a new phrase. So I just want to make sure, are you supposed to tongue or are you not supposed to tongue? I usually just play directly into the high F. And I just want to make sure I didn't miss. I mean, I don't know if you have a wrong or right or wrong interpretation, but I just want to make sure my copy isn't incorrect.
You know, it's really hard to know with some of these like quick transcriptions from things that are hundreds of years old, what's right and what's not right. So yes, you are correct that the version I'm looking at does have that high F as not being part of the slur, so it could be tongued. And I'm just looking at another, I think it's in a couple of these books from that all the youth get. In the 24 short concert pieces, it is slurred. The slur does go all the way to the F. And now that you brought that up, I'll probably slur it because I don't want to pop that F too much. You're right. So rather than what should be, I think this is another good opportunity to say what could be. And in this particular case, I think, Amy, what you're suggesting could be what I want to do. So if that's what you want to do, then do it.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
of course.
I prefer slurring just because it sounds like it's heading there. So
yeah, I'm gonna draw a slur, or well, I guess I just drew a line. So I'll fix that to a slur when I'm not using my mouse and I go back to my stylus. So thanks for pointing that out. All right. So with no further ado, would anybody like to? Oh, so let's see. I wanted to do just a couple of those breathing things to get ready for this. So we can do the yawning breath in and play the run. And I'd like to take it one step further. So I attended a class with Gary Shocker about, 2 decades ago. And he had the person snore in before playing. And in fact, every breath they took, he had them stop their momentum and snore with the thought of feeling that snore not only opens up the maxillary sinus, but really gets the back of the throat open. And it makes you take time, right? When I try to encourage my students to take, when you have time to breathe, take the time to breathe, their ego wants, our human ego wants to be like, no, I need to go, right? So let's go ahead. We're going to start just before that run, and we're going to snore in. And as you're practicing this section, because it's meant to bring a sense of peace and serenity and acceptance and letting go, rather than panic and fear and tension and all of those things, when we see those 16th note runs, I would encourage every breath you take in practice to be something that's going to make you take a little bit more time and feel it a little bit more open. So our goal for this week, I think, is the remainder of this section. And the first week's goal was starting at 29. So many of us have already practiced this section at 29. Let's go ahead and start there. And for a while, we'll do it together. And then I'm going to ask a couple of people to share out on their own. But each time we breathe, let's go ahead and snore for now. So starting at 29. Take your time. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop there. So those of you who are trying this, voice out. What are some things that you're noticing? And I see a little bit of laughter out there. And you know what? There are worse things than having a little bit of fun when you're practicing your flute, right? All right, what are some things that you noticed when you took the time and snored your breath in? Anybody notice anything out there? Maybe just check your mic. I think Anita, you're trying to voice something out.
Okay. I didn't actually get the snoring part. Could you do that? Could you demonstrate that again, please?
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't actually snore at night, thankfully. But I'm just trying to breathe kind of in a way that I'm breathing both in through my mouth and my nose, and I'm creating some kind of vibration in my face. So it's not like that, right? Oh, that just feels uncomfortable, right? Like a really wide open. And again, the snore might not be the important part. One of the important things is we're taking a very relaxed, calm breath, and we're taking the time to do it. If we never practice taking the time for an open breath, we're never going to learn that we can have an open breath. All right, any other observations out there? Amy?
I notice I can't breathe as wide through the nose. It's probably because the cavity is smaller, maybe. I don't know. But I feel like when I do O, breathe through my mouth, definitely a lot more air, a lot faster. And it seems like when you just breathe in the nose, it's like I need 3 times the amount of time to get the same amount of air that I want to get in. So it's just not as fast.
Right. And one of the points that I wanted to make is when you're practicing, give yourself 3 times the amount of air, give yourself 3 times as much time to take in air sometimes so that we can be relaxed and so that we can be calm and at peace. Yes, John.
Yes. So the negative part that people breathing through the nose, is it that it's noisy? Is that why people don't do it so frequently?
As far as playing the flute goes,
yes,
a lot of that has to do with just the speed. So as Amy was recognizing, she can't get as much air in as fast, and just the passage, our oral cavity is much open than our nasal passageways. We can pull more air in more rapidly when we breathe through the mouth. There's nothing wrong with breathing through your nose when you have time to breathe through your nose when playing the flute. In fact, I highly encourage it because breathing through your nose does open things up even more, but it also relaxes our nervous system more. So it does help calm the nerves. So before I perform any piece of music, I might act like I'm taking a breath in through my mouth to show a cue to my colleagues if I'm collaborating. But I actually always start my music by breathing in through my nose. And if I have a rest that's a couple of measures long, I'll breathe in through my nose for that too, just to remind myself to relax.
It's sort of like a meditation, sort of a breathing exercise that, as well. But it's not the same as wasabi that Berlin Philharmonic flutist he recommends. It's not the same as that, right?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen the wasabi exercise, so.
Well, it's not a neck.
That's Pahad. He talks about having a wasabi point in your sinuses. You know, the spot where you feel it when you eat too much wasabi.
Yeah, I think it's a voicing thing. It's a voicing, but that isn't necessarily a breathing. That's a voicing for a note, not inhalation.
Yeah, and and one thing, because obviously he is a flute player who knows what he's doing and talking about. Our entire sinus, all of these sinus cavities can act as resonating chambers, and so if we aren't feeling openness even up here, then we're losing a little bit of potential space in our playing. So every part of the inside of our skull and inside of the rib cage can work with resonance in our flute playing too. So that little bit up here might be what sets them apart to be like the top 0.5% of flute players in the world, right? I don't feel it up there yet, but I'm also not in the top % of flute players in the world. So maybe I'll Maybe I'll go get some wasabi tonight so I can learn that. Thank you for bringing that up, John. I took note of pahud. Was it pahud, Sean? I wrote down pahud and wasabi, so I'll look into that a little bit more. And I haven't had sushi in a while, so that sounds like it could be tasty. All right, and also, yes, Amy, snoring isn't time efficient. So I want to do this just one more time, and then I want to have you all play. But as we do this opening, rather than snore, and I want to encourage you to literally mimic a yawn. So before we do it, just everybody give me your most dramatic TV soap opera yawn. All right. And so I want to look around all of the cameras while we play this phrase. And I want to see every time you breathe, you acting like you're going to be up for a daytime Emmy or whatever the award is that they all seek. Here's the big one. Etc. All right, let's see. So how did that feel for everybody? Okay. And tell me how it might feel, how some of those phrases felt compared to when you were practicing them. I'm sure you're playing through them earlier this morning because that's what everybody does is try to play through the music right before the call starts, right? How did taking the time to do that now feel, not just in your breath, but to the notes that followed the breath? Any thoughts?
They were, I'm trying to find the word, authentic, clear, full. I don't know, something like that.
It felt more clear, more full, and more authentic. What a great word to also use in music, but especially music that is meant to convey such strong emotion. And by strong emotion, I mean like what emotion would be a better gift than like simplicity and peace? You know, like that is such a strong emotion. So if the point of this piece of music is to feel at peace, if we see those 30-second notes and panic and we take short, tight breaths and we stimulate our vagus nerve and our fight and flight responses, then we're taking away the potential for us as the performer to feel at peace. And if we start to practice with that sense of peaceful breath, giving the gift of that peace to yourself, when you have the time in practice, then you're going to be much more likely to have that mindset even when you take a faster breath in performance. And so the mindset of practice and the mindset of performance or playing can be very, very different. And we can have so many different goals in practice. And for me, for this piece, the goal is to find that sense of ease, that sense of comfort, that removal of the barriers that I put on myself, of fear, of tension, of panic, of expectation, of, oh no, those notes are high, or oh no, those notes will be fast. Those are all things that I'm putting onto myself. And so when I practice like this, I give myself that extra bit of time to give myself instead the gift of what is going to be nourishing for me as a player. And it feels better to play the music than afterwards. All right, Anita.
I can really get into this when the piano player's not there. But what do you do when you're working with someone who expects you to do things on the
That's a
beat.
very good question, Anita. And so I always talk with my students about what I call the 3 Ps. We have practice, play, perform, and they all have different expectations. They all have different mindsets. So in your practice at home, when you're alone without the pianist, take the time to do this. And then when you're with the pianist and you hear those moving eighth note boom, 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 boom underneath you, you won't have as much time. And so chances are you're going to revert back to a less calm, less open breath to some extent. But the more time you take doing this when you are alone at home practicing, the more likely you are to bring some essence of that, some amount of that into your faster breaths. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
And yes, you can actually also do this and shorten the amount of time that you take for your breath. So if you're doing that warm up, like what I was doing, the 5-note scale pattern warm up, or if you do the one that whatever it is, if you start by taking 2 beats of breath in, and then after a while or later on, you take just 1 beat of breath in, but try to keep that same sensation, and then maybe repeat it and you take a half a beat of breath in and still try to feel that. And then just observe and take notes, write in your own practice journal. Today I made it all the way to taking a 16th note breath at chord note equals 56, and it still felt good. Once I tried to go any faster, it didn't feel good today. That doesn't mean it won't feel good tomorrow, right? And if we keep with this practice, and that's what it is, a practice is repetition, and repetition isn't just in one day, but it's over a period of time. If we keep with the practice of feeling that space in our breath, then we're going to have much, much more likeliness of bringing some amount of that into our playing and our performing, right?
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, yes, you're not going to be able to take the time to snore when you've got the pianist chunking out underneath you, right? Other thoughts?
Yeah, and this is one instance where if you feel rushed or it sounds rushed, you can create the illusion of being more in control and more fluid by just spending a little more time on the first note at the bottom of the run. Just give it a little touch of tenuto, because if you shorten it even just a little, the whole thing sounds rushed. But if you stretch it just a little bit, you can make up the time before you get to the F and still land with the piano.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Or should I play it?
Let's go ahead and demonstrate it, Sean, because
All right.
I'd love to hear you play anyway.
So if I'm going along and that, I didn't put any emphasis on that lower note, but was a difference apparent?
Absolutely.
So it didn't take a lot.
Great. It gives a little bit of a sensation of grounding then too. John, I see you've got your hand up.
The bottom.
Is it in a different place than it was on Zoom?
There's an option in the settings, I think, where you can push spacebar to talk. Sometimes that's easier, right? But you can't hold spacebar while you play.
Don't hear you yet, John. No, sorry. All right, so let's see. Let's hear some of you play. And so, Anita, I know that you were interested in giving us a little bit of a demonstration. Would you go ahead and make sure you're unmuted and share out?
Okay. So this is taking some bravery on my part. That's as far as we're going, right?
Go as far as you'd like. Would you like to go on?
Sure. I love this piece.
Gorgeous playing, Anita.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
yes, it does take a little bit of vulnerability to present what we love to anybody ever, right? So thank you for sharing this with us today. You played really, really beautiful. Now, what is something about what you just did that you are proud of?
I thought it sounded really beautiful.
I thought you sounded really beautiful. Try saying, I thought I sounded really beautiful.
Oh, no, I said I thought I sounded pretty beautiful. That's what I meant. A lot of it I really, really liked and thought it was great. A few things, I was going between practicing and performing.
So your mind was still analyzing a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really tough to turn that off when we are in front of an audience. And once we start thinking, oh, I messed up that run, I need to practice that run more, is when we get out of our performance mode, which is the sharing out. So that's why I like to really think of these as 3 separate P's. And it's so hard to turn that off, right? And what helps us turn that off better? Just like anything else, repetition. The more that you perform this piece in front of people, friends, family, communities, the more you're going to be able to turn off that critical voice of yours while you're performing, right? And say, thank you for that feedback, practice voice. I'll come back to that thought later. And you can just get back into your performance voice, getting back to that performance part of yourself. What else did you notice when you just played now, Anita?
There was some place that I played 8th notes as 16th notes or something like that.
Measure, okay, so to be detail oriented, measure 33. So just that very 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th measure that you played, those 8th notes were a bit rushed for sure. And so that's a place where maybe just draw a tenuto line over it, or draw some vibrato marking above it, or use your highlighter for whatever it is that you want to invite into that. But I think you can think about, rather than worrying about the rhythm, think about filling those notes. And it's really hard after we play something fast, like those 30-second notes in measure 32, to stop playing fast. Once we start moving our fingers fast, we want to keep moving our fingers fast. So let's go ahead and try that. Can we start with that pickup, the C, C, E, D, and go ahead and play through that phrase? beautiful, right? And so you get to choose also what you mark on your music. And the more aggressive the mark is, the more we think it's going to be helpful. But oftentimes it actually can distract ourselves or lead to, like, I don't want to say like future trauma, but like if you just draw something pleasant on your music that represents like filling up the space, or, you know, even just the counts, because those are logic based rather than emotion based, something like that can draw reference to that measure being accurate, which it now was. And the tone was beautiful on those notes, right?
Thank you.
All right. Other things that you notice about your playing in this are things that you want to talk about.
No.
Okay. And it was really well done. If I may, there's just one or two little things I'd like to just try with you. So measure 45 and 47, we have those huge ascending leaps. And I know that you and I have talked about this in the past, and you actually did it. And I want to say yay. But because you did it, I wonder if you can demonstrate to everybody purposefully putting more intensity on the lower note, so that way you don't have to work as hard for the air on the higher note. So by that, what I mean, in measure 45, on the F sharp, I need to give extra sound to. And then she didn't have to push the E flat so hard. And then the same two measures later on the G sharp F. You did a great job with the air. If you watch this video back, you'll notice, though, in addition to doing the air, you did a little bit of a pop. And I don't think that took away, because you sounded great, but I don't know if it's necessary. So let's just try those two measures and really feel like you're pressing into the lower note and then floating up rather than lifting up to the higher note.
I'm going to start a little bit before that. Oh, no, that's wrong, right? So.
Yeah, and I know it's so tempting to try the phrase. Let's just try just those notes. Let's do the F sharp E flat one, because that's probably the harder of the two. Good. All right, and we can actually combine that with the exercise. Whoa, that whenever somebody joins, that makes the loudest doorbell sound right in my ear. I need to how to change that. Okay, so let's combine the exercise Sean was talking about with that passage. So let's play F sharp, mezzo forte, G, piano, and then return to an F sharp piano. Give that a try.
Okay, where are you again?
I'm making something up. F sharp, G, F sharp.
But low, all on the same.
Good. I'm going to stay diatonic to the interval just to save time, but still a descending half step. So F sharp, A flat. F sharp, B flat, A. F sharp, C sharp, and then B sharp or C. Oh, sorry, C natural. F sharp, C, B. F sharp, D, C sharp. F sharp, E flat, D. Beautiful. And so what we did was we made up our own exercise directly applied to this piece, inspired by Moises de la Sonorité growing interval exercise that Sean brought up at the beginning of the session. Does that make sense? And so each time you grew the interval, which became then technically more challenging, but you started off with that presence of focusing and then lifting away. And did you, I don't know if you noticed, but like your body looked less tense while you were making those larger intervals. Did it feel any less tense?
Yes.
Sometimes when we're making up our own exercise like this, I know it can feel more tense in some ways because you're thinking really hard about what was it he said, but you demonstrated that so beautifully. Thank you, Anita.
And don't stop at the target note. Go a little beyond it so that when you back down to your target note, it's actually kind of comfortable.
Feels easier. Yeah, that's actually something I would always recommend too, Sean. Thank you for pointing that out. So move beyond. So by that, he would mean we would do then the F sharp to an F natural, E natural. Let's try that. Just to, that way you know you can do more than you need. Technique's a little bit more challenging for the F sharp, F natural, E. But let's try that. F sharp, F, E.
F sharp.
F sharp, F, E.
F sharp.
Yeah, so do that a time or two more when you're not having to think about the fingers moving then, and just feel the comfort of the air. And the cool thing about that is the very next one, it goes from a G sharp to an F E. So you actually just practice a growing interval for the next one too, because that the interval F sharp F E is one whole step larger than the interval G sharp F E would have been. So bravo for that, Anita.
Yay, that's
Cool.
terrific. Thanks.
All right, and Deborah, I think that you were interested in playing out for us today.
Yes, please.
Beautiful. Tell yourself a few things. You don't need to tell me. Tell yourself a few things that you liked about your playing just now.
I like that it moved forward.
Can
And
you
not just-
rephrase? I like that I moved it forward.
Yes, I liked it. I moved it forward and not playing just by the phrase,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Because with slow pieces, I have a tendency of just not moving forward as much as I like to. So I like that.
Good. What else did you like about your playing?
That I kept the pitch going. That's important, especially on your slower pieces. And I like the endings.
Yeah, those note releases are incredibly difficult, period. And then when you throw intonation into the mix, they become even more difficult. So wonderful work there. And I'm glad that you were happy with it.
Thank
Are
you.
there things that you thought that you still see opportunity for in your playing in this piece?
Always work on a better tone, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought you had a lovely tone. So what about your tone do you feel like could still be improved?
Well, I just like, and I'm not talking vibrato. I just like a rich, nonstop airflow tone.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't like it, like in and out. I just like it to keep wrapping around each note. As I like to go through the note as opposed to a note.
Are there places in this where you felt like you were not connecting the notes with your air or blowing between the notes, playing between the notes?
Our favorite, at 45, 46, 40, 47, da 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 da. That going down from that A to the B flat, I like to practice so separately, but I just have to think more up as opposed to, going down to the note. I like to think more open, shoulders down, more open on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
and that
my
is
hemorrhoid note.
the part that you just pointed out is something that I think is incredibly tricky in here. Two things about this. So in measure 48 and 49, we have the three repeated A's. F, G, F, G, A, B flat, F, G, A. And it's so tempting for us to go and stop the air on the first A, and then make the second A just a pick up to the next A. And I think you've seen me reference before that when we have those places where we want to invite some kind of lift to it, rather than stop the air, just imagine like the air is literally lifting just a little bit more. So the airstream continues. Would you play just a couple of A's in a row? Just feeling that ba ba da ba da ba da kind of rhythm. And now try a little bit more lift, which is going to make it sound to the listener like there's a little bit of silence or space there. Even though you're not going to stop the air, you're just going to feel the air lift. Ba, 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 ba. So a little bit more exaggerated lift.
Okay.
Good. So I can tell that you're trying this. And what happens is you're backing off the air a little bit, which is why we heard the lower octave sound.
Yeah.
So the airstream has to remain continuously fast. You're just changing the lift of it. So for me, I don't want to say jaw movement, but for me, it's a little bit more of the lower part coming up. Pow, 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 which keeps the airstream from slowing down because it's compressing the air, and from also blowing lower to the flute, which will lower the pitch, right?
Yes.
Try that one more time. Pow, 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 pow. Just going forward through that same rhythm. Now, the first one I think was as perfect as it could get. And then they got progressively more legato the longer you did that. So can you try that again? Ta, ta, ta. And I'm asking you to work more than what you're going to have to in this piece. And as Sean also pointed out, we should work harder in our practice so that way when we play it feels so easy, right? Take more. The first one you're doing so great, but then you're just kind of making it more legato after that. Yeah, so that had the right amount of space, or a nice amount of space, I think. Did it feel like you were still keeping your airstream moving forward?
I like that better. The last
You
one.
like that better?
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit of practice. And I think it probably makes sense to practice that on lower notes first, and then maybe make your way up the scale. Because these higher notes just do require a little bit more of control of where we're aiming the air for it to not drop down to the lower sound.
All right.
But feeling that forward movement. So I don't know. It's not like skipping a rock, but for some reason that like visualization is helpful in my mind.
Yeah.
Of like, and plus I've never been able to skip a rock across a pond anyway. So it makes me grumpy when I try. But that kind of forward motion where it's just kind of lifting up.
Okay.
Any other thoughts about those repeated pitches where we want some amount of space, but not stopping the air from the group today?
I think just keep in mind that kind of the target of this shape is that last A, right? So you're building to that A, and then you're backing off a little bit when you go to the following note. Da. The rest is lead up, right?
Yeah, and it has a printed crescendo under it, so we can lean into that. And also there's the rule of 3 in my mind, some, more, most. Like if you give each one just a little bit more quality of that sound, then it has that growth too. So, but that little bit of crescendo could help too when you put it back in the context of
and he writes the whole thing 3 times, so we have 3 of them to play.
And you have time to practice that. And then the other thing that you mentioned, John, I see you have a comment or a question.
I got it. I have a basic question, but you want to finish your thought here?
I can bring up my point too in a second.
You got a memory. I don't. Okay, so this is where is the dance in this?
So this
Yeah.
is a different kind of dance. So again, the version of this that I saw, and I haven't watched all the videos that other people posted, but the version of this that I saw is a pantomime where Euridice is in Hades and the blessed spirits, oh, my mom's calling. The blessed spirits are removing her memories from her. And in the version that I saw, it's symbolic of she's wearing like full outfit. And then they like are taking off like little strips of clothing at a time until she's just in like a sheer like nothingness. And her face changes where she becomes more and more peaceful throughout it. So I don't think we need to think of this literally as a dance, nor do I think it has to be exactly a metaphor for becoming peaceful or accepting your own death.
Yeah.
But I think somewhere in between, we can have some sense of calm and peace through it.
Okay. But and both, so there's 2 parts to this. It almost seems like the dance starts at bar 29. Is that correct then? Because the other, they're both in 3 somewhat. So, well, anyway, the other question is the interpretation of it. I have the book, the collection book, and the markings, they don't really indicate. They're so not very specific, but there's certainly, you're not playing this in time, right? There's a tradition of what we're doing for interpreting this, right? Especially in the fast note area before whatever that bar number is, I don't know. There's set things. We're not trying to, the piano player is not going to be pulling you any place. You have to figure out, is there are set things here, right?
I personally play it relatively rhythmic.
You do?
And I do. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I just listened
but I know
to one
other
recording.
people like to play it less rhythmically, and that's one of the things we get to do with interpretations. If you were working with a dance company, they might want certain parts of it to be quite rhythmic, so they know where to put their foot next. If you're playing this casually for a community, you can do what you want, right? So you get to make some of those choices on your own. And as far as what feels like a dance and what doesn't feel a dance, like you get to be the director of the story that you tell through music also.
Yeah.
When you are holding the instrument that is telling the story, you get to be the person who decides how to interpret that story. For me, the opening and closing section is actually the dance part. But part of that is because my earliest influence is that ballet scene that I referenced. And it's actually there, the spirits are just walking around the fountain in the opening part. at all peace, like they're just walking around the fountain, doing little spirity gestures and stuff like that. It's kind of like a court was being held in the underworld around a fountain. They're all in white. It's pretty. And then the middle part, which has the more activity in the accompaniment, is where they are like taking Euridice's memories from her. And then the final part, which is the return of the opening, ba da 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 da, is Euridice joins them in the dance, walking in circles around the fountain. So that visualization sticks very strong with me, because I thought that was such a beautiful and like visual interpretation of that ballet.
Right.
But it can be used in different parts too, or for different purposes. And this was added. I'm not a historian. I think this was added into the second version of the opera when he like rewrote parts of it for France, but it wasn't in the original. Does anybody know the answer to that? Okay, we'll just delete that from the video then.
Even the first part, does this sound like a normal minuet to you? Any minuet you've ever heard before? Very legato. Doesn't sound like a minuet, does it?
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe
it's both wrong on both counts. The dance and the minuet, neither fit.
Neither seem to fit. Yeah, so maybe you just call it Blessed Spirit then. Sean?
Have to go. Bye.
Yeah. Oh, you have to go? Thanks for being here, Sean. All right, and then Deborah, I just had one more thought for you about the descending interval there too.
Yes, sir.
So the growing interval exercise, the Moïse de la Sonorité, always great. But have you ever done the drawn octave exercises or the octave smears where this is an exercise I love. So you can do it on any of the notes that don't change fingers between the octaves, which is from low E through C sharp. And with drawn octaves, you're going to try to stop, like you're going to start to make the changes of air and oral cavity shape to move to the octave without doing it. It's going to be very distorted and weird. Is the octave.
So much.
And then I try to linger in that in-between space. Did it come across as distorted through the microphone?
Yes.
All right. Try doing that part of it. Just playing it. We'll do an A. Try playing the low A and then play the octave just so you know what you normally do. And then try to do less. So you stop partway between and you get that distorted sound. Cool. And then the next part of this would be start on the octave, dip into that distorted sound, and then return to the octave. So I'm playing ugly on purpose. And I like that as an exercise for anybody who's having trouble sustaining those notes above the staff, because then it helps us figure out like how to fix it when it goes wrong on accident. But then what we're going to do is try to go through that distorted sound back to the lower octave. And it's much harder to do. It is much harder to do, but it is possible.
It's kind of stuck in the clouds.
Yeah, and part of why it's harder to do that is because all of us have a habit of doing descending intervals by significantly backing off our airstream, which generally makes then the next note flatter or softer or less beautiful tone color, whatever it might be. But if we practice smearing between these octaves, we begin to gain trust that we don't have to back off the airstream quite as much as we did yesterday or last year, or, you know, right? And then those descending intervals, instead of going, it was hard to connect when I was holding my flute with one hand, but the descending intervals aren't interrupted by dropping the airspeed and then trying to bring it back in time to bring the B flat pitch up, right? So maybe try that descending portion of the drawn octaves exercise a little bit. And then like report back on how that felt to do. And if those intervals, those descending intervals felt any more smooth or any more connected after doing that.
Okay.
And that's based, again, like I love learning from master flute players, but I rarely do the exercise that they wrote or they taught. Instead, my favorite question to ask is, this is a way of doing what? Or what is the purpose of this? Or how can I adapt that to be what I need today? And so that was something that I read in the Knife Finger book. And one of my teachers was a student of his. So she taught it, just the ascending portion of it. And it was her idea of how to find the perfect embouchure, because it lets you move between octaves pretty freely. But she never taught the descending aspect of that. That's something that I tried to do later in life. And when I started more actively practicing the descending aspect of that, I noticed I can move up and down harmonics more easily. And my descending octaves felt much more comfortable. And we spend a lot of time practicing the ascending intervals of octaves and focusing on reaching the highest harmonic possible, that we're focusing on all the increase of pressure, that like sometimes by the time we descend back down to the lower thing, we're no longer like focused on trying to do something good with our harmonics. So there's that part too. Like descending intervals, I think, are under practice and are as flute players in general. And so finding that in between sound and then smearing between those sounds lets us have that descending interval be much more in tune and have nice tone. And especially in a situation like this with the Gluck, where in measure 49, we have that descending seventh from the A to the B flat with a decrescendo. Of course, that's going to want to be flat. No pun intended. The B flat is going to want to be flat. Okay. It's time for me to end the call. I'm getting a little too sappy, but that kind of exercise can really help give you control over some of those descending leaps, which is a great balance to what we talked about with Anita with practicing the ascending leaps. So yeah, intervals are great things to practice. And as Sean mentioned, he's gone now, but the Moïse de la Sonorité, I think it's the first exercise in there, is the growing interval exercise. It's such a brilliant, simple exercise. We can start on any note. Just decide in your piece, rather than trying to do his exercise, look at your own music and say, this is my target note. I'm going to grow to it and from it, kind of a thing. And we'll have a lot of, you create the exercise that you need for yourself today, which might not be the exercise that you need for yourself next year or the next piece of music that you play. But you can still apply the ways that you practice and the ways you learned to whatever it is that comes next. So thanks everybody for listening to me ramble. I'm going to end the recording, but I'm not going to end the call just yet. So thank you all. Again, we'll have another group practice next month. I don't remember what next month's piece is. Does anybody remember? Is it Stamets, or do we have something, or is it the Molique? Molique. La Flute de Pan, Molique. I think we're doing the third movement, which is the technically challenging movement. So, of course, if we want to play a piece of music that has a lot of scales, it's great for us to start practicing our scales. So that way we're not stressed when we get to the music. We get to just play it a little bit more. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Mather.
Thank you.